yang berbeda-beda. Oke, 5 ini semuanya penting. Ini saya kirim saja kepada Anda. Lima penting dan bias teori. Klik kanan copy. Enggak mau. Satu. Dua. Oke. Nah, itu tentang teori itu. Anda bisa mencoba langsung tentang probability, tapi sebelum masuk itu saya harus berikan pada Anda beberapa mungkin penjelasan saya kurang jelas. Ini ada di Khan Academy tentang probability, mulai tentang teorinya.
Probability. What I want to do in this video is give you at least a basic overview of probability. Probability, a word that you've probably heard a lot of, and you are probably a little bit familiar with it, but hopefully this will give you a little deeper understanding. So let's say that I have a fair coin over here. So when I talk about a fair coin, I mean that it has an equal chance of landing on one side or another. So you can maybe view it as the sides are equal, the weight is the same on either side. It's not, if I flip it in the air, it's not more likely to land on one side or the other. It's equally likely. And so you have one side of this coin, so the heads, yes, towards Washington, I'll assume it's a quarter of some kind. And then the other side, of course, is the tails. That is heads. The other side, right over there, is tails. And so if I were to ask you, what is the probability? I'm going to flip a coin. I'm going to flip a coin, and I want to know what is the probability of getting heads. And I can write that like this: the probability of getting heads. And you probably, just based on that question, have a sense of what probability is asking. It's asking for some type of way of getting your hands around an event that's fundamentally random. We don't know whether it's heads or tails, but we can start to describe the chances of it being heads or tails. And we'll talk about different ways of describing that. So one way to think about it, and this is the way the probability tends to be introduced in textbooks, is you say, well, look, how many different equally likely possibilities are there? So how many equally likely possibilities? So number of equally likely possibilities, and of the number of equally possibilities, I care about the number that contain my event right here. So the number of possibilities that meet my constraint, that meet my conditions, So in the case of the probability of figuring out heads, what is the number of equally likely possibilities? Well, there's only two possibilities. We're assuming that the coin can't land on its corner and just stand straight up. We're assuming that it lands flat. So there's two possibilities here, two equally likely possibilities. You could either get heads or you could get tails. And what's the number of possibilities that meet my conditions? Well, there's only one, the condition of heads. So it'll be 1 over 2. So one way to think about it is the probability of getting heads is equal to 1 over 2 is equal to 1/2. If I wanted to write that as a percentage, we know that 1/2 is the same thing as 50%. Now, another way to think about or conceptualize probability that will give you this exact same answer is to say, well, if I were to run the experiment of flipping a coin, So this flip, you view this as an experiment. I know this is the kind of experiment that you're used to. You normally think an experiment is doing something in chemistry or physics or all the rest. But an experiment is every time you run this random event. So one way to think about probability is, if I were to do this experiment, an experiment many, many, many times, if I were to do it 1,000 times, or 1,000,000 times, or 1,000,000,000 times, or 1,000,000,000,000 times, and the more the better, what percentage of those would give me what I care about? What percentage of those would give me heads? And so another way to think about this 50% probability of getting heads is, if I were to run this experiment tons of times, if I were to run this forever, closer or an infinite number of times, what percentage of those would be heads? You would get this 50%. And you can run that simulation. You can flip a coin, and it's actually a fun thing to do. I encourage you to do it. If you could take 100 or 200 quarters or pennies, stick them in a big box, shake the box so you're kind of simultaneously flipping all of the coins, and then count how many of those are going to be heads. And you're going to see that the larger the number that you are doing, the more likely you're going to get something really close to 50%. There's always some chance, even if you flip the coin 1,000,000 times, there's some super duper small chance that you get all tails. But the more you do, the more likely that that things are going to trend towards 50% of them are going to be heads.
Okay.
Now let's just apply these same ideas.
Saya berhentikan dulu sampai di sini. Oke. Saya coba ini dengan apa namanya? Bagaimana mensimulasikan itu? Saya perkenalkan Anda dengan di Excel-nya. Ya. Perhatikan saya buat ini. Tadi kan peluangnya angka 1 dan 2. Nah, di Excel itu ada fasilitas yang namanya ini flip coin ya, saya anggap ya, flip coin. Flip coin kan hanya ada 2 kemungkinan ya. Maka saya bilang, saya buat percobaan, benarkah dia itu nanti peluangnya berapa? Kalaupun saya lempar 1.000 kali, 110.000 kali dan lain-lain, atau 5 kali, peluangnya itu adalah setengah atau 0,5. Maka antara 0 atau 1, atau jangan 0,1 lah, 1 dan 2. Jadi dia 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1 adalah head, 2 adalah 1 adalah bagian gambar, 2 bagian angka, gitu ya. Bentar. Kalau 1 kali, oh ini dia keluarnya adalah ini percobaan pertama, kemudian nanti kita jalankan ini percobaannya sebanyak 1, 2 terus gitu ya. Sebanyak misalnya, nah terserah lah, 200 kali misalnya di sini ya. Kemudian di sini juga saya buat nomornya, saya urut ya. Cara membuat nomor supaya urut, tinggal Anda klik di sini. Kemudian klik fill series. Ya, itu nomor urut. Jadi nomor. Nah, ini ada kebetulan karena angka random dia setiap saat berubah. Kita hitung berapakah yang angka 1. Jadi sini sama dengan seluruh datanya, jumlah datanya dulu, jumlah data, dari jumlah data, ini jumlah datanya seluruhnya. Oke, ketemu jumlah, mungkin kita mau biar bulat, misalnya saya tambahin 1 deh. Oke, ini berarti saya apa namanya? Saya tarik aja 1 lagi. Oke, jumlah data adalah atau apa peluang seluruhnya ya, outcome ya, all outcome. Sama dengan sampai B261 tadi ya. Kemudian kita hitung yang keluar kepala atau angka 1. Jika angka 1, satunya adalah angka 2. Maka di sini sama dengan count if dalam kurung range-nya dulu. Range-nya yang kita hitung, klik koma, kriterianya adalah 1. Maka kita ambil kriterianya adalah 1. Enter. 138, Yang bawahnya peluang kalau dia 2. Tapi ini kita harus lihat dulu. B2 sampai B261. Perhatikan ya. Kita ulang-ulang. Perkiraannya mendekati itu. Kalau kita bagi, berapakah ininya bahwa dia kepala sama dengan ini dibagi jumlah seluruh outcome. Kalau ditambah, dibagi sama dengan ini dibagi seluruh outcome. Jadi kalau kita ulang-ulang, paling bedanya dikit. Kalau kita bulatkan, ya, oke, berarti paling tidak dia mendekati 50%. Ini saya tekan F9, saya berubah-ubah terus. Kalaupun ini saya tambahkan, jadi ini saya buat aja di sini adalah B2 sampai B1000 misalnya, atau B10.000, B10.000 ya, udah 10.000 ya. Ini juga berarti sampai 10.000. Ini berarti juga sampai B10.000, 10.000. Dan ini saya buat dia 10.000. 10.000 berarti saya tarik lagi di bawah ini menjadi 10.000 kali. Rp3.000, Rp4.000, Rp5.000, Rp6.000, Rp7.000, Rp8.000, Rp9.000, Rp10.000. Semakin banyak dia akan semakin mendekati, semakin bagus katanya. Oke, kita lihat. Dia semakin mendekati 0,5, 0,5 karena peluangnya cuma ada 2. Oke, 10.000. Start. Nomornya juga saya buatkan sampai 20.000 ya. Oke, salah ya. Diambil dari sini dulu, baru tarik klik 2 kali. Oke, kita lihat hasilnya. Tetap di sini, perhatikan P-nya, P di sini kalau dikasih nama, saya kasih nama sini. Ini adalah peluang dari 2, peluang dari kejadian 1, peluang kejadian 2. Dan semakin besar dia semakin kecil sekali perubahannya di 0,5 begitu. Ya. Kalau mau buat percobaan. Bagaimana kalau misalnya bukan flip coin? Kita ganti flip coin ini sudah oke, kita buat lagi yang lain, yaitu tadi dadu. Dadu ada 6 kan? Maka di sini random between 1 sampai 6. 1 sampai 6 kita copy ke bawah. Ulang 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maka di sini kan masih baru 5. 6. Oke, ini saya copy, saya kasih ini dulu supaya dia tidak bergerak. Ya, tinggal saya kopikan saja. Berarti dia 0, sorry. Ini dibagi ini kan, berarti ininya harus kita kasih F4. Jadi peluang dadu 1, keluar angka 1, angka 2, angka 3, angka 4, angka 5, angka 6. Oke. Maka peluang dia keluar angka 1, 17%, dia 16, sekian itu, ya 17% kira-kira. Jadi seperti itu.